Welcome on in, golf fans. It's your boy Gsluke here with our DFS and betting preview for this week's CJ Cup Byron Nelson. Gonna get you guys ready for all of your exposure, whether it's over there on the DFS side, over there with your GPP lineups, or over there with your outright and top 10, 20 betting exposure. Gonna go over everything you guys need to know, including first off, a look at my modeling and key stats for this week, what I'm using to identify some of those top plays, and then afterwards, we're gonna go through my top pieces of exposure, both over there for DFS with my core and value plays, a few guys that I'll be getting well over the field onto my lineups, as well as a look at some of my betting exposure heading into lock, which the last few weeks has been on absolute fire. A few weeks ago, we had that JT outright, which we hit for a little bit over 10K there. And then last week, we had a GPP takedown over there in the $33 dog leg. And of course, a runner-up finish over there in the $5 lottery. So big contest, nearly took it down out there with one of my single entry lineups, which made for a pretty great week. So obviously, things going our way over the last few events. Let's keep it rolling over here for the CJ Cup Byron Nelson, which is more of what we're used to out here on tour. No more teams to worry about. Back to our bread and butter out here on tour, which has me pretty stoked out here for this action. So let's go ahead, hop on in, and not waste any time at all. If you guys haven't already seen my course breakdown already, there's been a few changes to the golf course since we were last here. So they added over 150 yards to the track overall. They've added some trees, a few different angles off the tee that are different than before. They try and make it a little bit harder. And if you've been following this event the last 4 years or so, it's gone really low with the scoring. I'm talking 20 to 26 under par winning most years, and a lot easier scoring than I think what they anticipated. So they went out there, they're going to completely renovate it after this event. The green's going to be completely recontoured by 2026. So even though there's going to be some changes already implemented this year, it's going to be even different by the next time we get here. And the golf course was already a long course to begin with. Definitely a lot of long irons that you're hitting around this track, but that's going to be even more so the case after the changes. So expect this track to be a little bit harder here this year. Then as you go forward, probably even more so the case over the next 2-3 seasons. And this was already a course, as I was saying, that had some length to it, but those long irons, so from 175 plus, are going to be even more important here in 2025. So off the tee, also club head speed, driving distance, a little bit more important than what you're looking at before, but it's still going to be a relatively low scoring affair. A lot of birdies being made, but it's over there on the par fives or in some of the more scoreable holes. So putting coming into play, you do have bent grass greens over here at this part of the schedule, but with some of the changes, it does leave quite a few unknowns. So you can see that we don't have a ton of key stats over here in the modeling this week, and I'm trying to keep it as simplistic as possible. We know for a fact that long iron play, those longer proximity buckets, are always a big factor around this golf course. It's definitely going to be a longer affair too. It's a little bit softer this year on top of them adding those 150 yards. The area's gone a bunch of rain over the last week or so. So it could be a real big hitter's ballpark. So that's why I've been looking at that, some putting stats, and then anytime you're going to have a super low winning score, you want to be focusing on birdie or better percentage as well. So you're going to see a lot of the players that we're getting to have that kind of firepower aren't the kind of players that you'd play at, let's say, an RBC Heritage, a Port Royal Golf Club out there with the Bermuda Championship. It's more so what you'd see at major championships, more so what you'd see at big hitters ballparks, like kind of like what you have at the Wells Fargo Championship, now the Choice Championship over there at Quail Hollow. It's that kind of stat profile that's likely to get the job done. And last year's champion, Taylor Pendrith, a perfect example of that sort of player. But a few years ago, like 3-4 years ago, when KH Lee went back-to-back, Sung Kang won when it was at Trinity Forest, a much different golf course than what we have here. I think it's morphing into a little bit of a different beast, and this is going to be our first taste of this golf course after the changes, but I think it's going to have a tangible impact on that leaderboard, and especially if conditions are as soft as advertised. So that's what we'll be looking for out there in our player pool. Of course, guys, over there, Bet the Number, you can build your own models and figure out exactly who grade out's the best for any given week. Code Luke10 when you're signing up will give you a discount off any membership there. Also access to a free trial to go ahead and check out all the tools. And of course, over there on my Patreon page, you can see my exact model weightings to go out there and replicate it, maybe change it to your liking over there on the Bet the Number site, and get exactly the kind of plays that you're looking for out there in your player pool. So with that out of the way, let's go ahead and cycle over to our exposure and what I'm actually going out there and playing for this week. Our first core play is going to be Scottie Scheffler, and really he's the only player I'm thinking about betting outright this week because I think it's a perfect setup after the renovations. Adding that length, just the softness of the course, going to be playing maybe even closer to like 7,700 yards with how soft it's going to be. Scottie Scheffler is the kind of player that I want. Those long irons coming into play on like 12, even up to like 14 of the 18 approaches. Those 175 plus irons, you're going to find no better player in the world than a Scottie Scheffler. So obviously in this kind of field, he's going to be at the top top of those rankings. And whether it's his projected fantasy points, his projected made cut rate, he laps the field. I'm talking about a 20-point difference from Scotty down to these other 10K players. Like Jordan Spieth, I'm a huge fan of, but the projections don't love him around this sort of track. He's in the mid to low 70s when it comes to projections. So though he is about $3,000 more expensive than Jordan, you're getting over a 20-point differential. And as of the early lineups that I was running this morning, just to kind of see with a dry run what it was spitting out, I was getting 100% Scotty Scheffler. So that's the sort of projection that you're getting on paper this week. And really the only argument against him would be the course history argument. His best finish would be a top 5 finish, which for a 13K golfer is not going to be enough. And even this 15th place finish was probably not enough back there in 2022. And these ones back there, 4 or 5 years ago, were certainly not enough at this kind of price tag. So, there is an argument to be made that he's not foolproof around this golf course because we've seen that before over the last few years, but he didn't play here last year. He's a much better player at this point than what you had with some of those past finishes. And if you take a look at the form heading in, he's playing about as solid golf as you could possibly want, gaining across all 4 stat categories, most significantly with the approach play and the putter, which is exactly what you want to see for these tour pros. The putter can be a little bit volatile, but he is more of a ball striking heavy player, so it's kind of nice to see that he's getting some putts to drop. And then of course the tee to green play hasn't been like 3-4 shots gained per round like we've seen at times out there from Scotty Scheffler. He's still lapping the rest of the top of the field when it comes to all 3 categories. So I like myself some Scotty this week, and I don't think that's a massive hot take. And in the outright market, it is scaring me off of taking really anyone else in that market. Now, the sub 3 plus 300 number that you can get out there at Scotty isn't going to be quite enough for me to go out there and take a dabble right now. Maybe if he has a slightly slow start to the week, or maybe somebody goes out there and nukes out there on the first half of tee times, assuming maybe he's a PM guy, and really sets the mark out there at like -8, -9, you can get something closer to like plus 400, maybe plus 450 out there on a Scotty Scheffler. I'd be willing to buy pretty early on the week, but as is, I'm just going to play a whole bunch out there in DFS, probably at least 50% of my lineups featuring a Scotty Scheffler. And there's an argument, it's just way too early in the week for me to really know what my actual exposure is going to be, but it's at least in the back of my head that I might be locking him into every single lineup that I'm playing. So I love myself the projection. Really, that's what I just can't avoid at that sort of number. And he's number 1 in every single category. Number 1 in recent form ranking, total model ranking, long-term course fit, you name it. He really checks every box that you're looking for. So not a surprise that he's going to be finding his way into my lineups. And I guess the other thing we have to consider with this sort of play is the price tag. When you're spending $13,000 up top, it is going to have ramification down towards the bottom end of the board, but there are enough 6K guys that I like that we're going to be able to go out there and fit them into lineups. And I don't think there's a massive difference between a lot of the 7K players this week and then what you have there in the 8K range. So if the result of you playing Scotty is that you can't take like 2 guys in the 8-9K range, more rather you have to live in that 6 and 7K range for your last like 4 or 5 spots, then so be it, right? Like I'm willing to make that kind of different, that kind of sacrifice when it comes to talent level, when it's not that massive of a drop off out there from range to range. So you're going to see that with some of the value plays that we're taking. They're a little bit cheaper down the board than I sometimes get to, because I think the pricing on especially the few guys that we're going to talk up here together isn't efficient on that portion of the board. So I'm going to have them in a bunch of lineups. I guess the question becomes is what I'm going to do in the outright market, because as of right now, I've got 0 exposure over there, and Scotty Scheffler is really the one player I'm considering for that. Next up, our first bet of the week will be our second core play that we're talking about here together. It's going to be a Siwoo Kim at $9,400, and the market that I took him for was a top 10 over there at plus 325, a little bit of a better number compared to some of the other books around the industry, and he's got elite tier course history. So unlike a Scotty Scheffler up top that has been a little bit sketchier around this golf course, Siwoo Kim has a bunch of top finishes. So last year had the top 13, had a runner-up finish a few years ago out there to Jason Day, and before that it was a little bit more hit or miss with the missed cut and then the made cut the year before that, but he's tailor-made for this style of golf course. He's got the mid to long irons down, one of the best players from 175 yards plus on the PGA Tour, and that includes the par 5s approaches. He's one of the best 3-wood driver off the deck players in PGA Tour history, and that's not an exaggeration out there with Siwoo Kim. But even from that 175 to 225 range, which you're going to have a ton of after the renovation this week, you love him there at $9,400. So from the course fit angle, he really fits a lot of that, and he's kind of going under the radar this week. His form isn't spectacular really in any one category, but from tee to green, he's gaining in all 3 categories, just losing over there with the putter, which you've got to say is pretty typical for Siwoo Kim. He's never the most consistent putter that we have out here in Tour. I will say around this track, the last few starts though, that he's found some success out here on these greens. He hasn't gained strokes to the field in like every round or anything like that, but he's had a few spike rounds around a TPC Craig Ranch. So I like that for Siwoo Kim. And even if you zoom out to the last 24 rounds to give it a little bit of a larger sample, he's still gaining in the 3T to green categories and then predictably, right, losing about 0.2 strokes over there with the putter. So you kind of know what you're getting with the Siwoo Kim. And the one thing I'll say about him is that when you get the good Siwoo, when you get him out there in contention, you know, he's nearly going to win. He's going to give you that top 5, top 10 finish. And I know we had that really disappointing Sunday a few weeks ago where he was up there towards the top and kind of laid down. It usually doesn't happen for Siwoo. Normally when he gets up into the mix like that, he's got that killer instinct to go out there and get the job done. So, you know, with the top 10 finish, we do have some leeway for him to kind of falter a little bit. But even if he finishes strong, right, goes out there and let's say he's middle of the pack and then makes a strong finish over the last day or so to get into that top 10, that's why I'm going after that market with Siwoo. I'm not sure that he's going to go out there and be able to outduel Scotty Scheffler head to head. The course fit, I just think, favors some of those longer guys like a Scotty, maybe some of the other bombers in this range. But with how consistent he is with those mid to long irons, which I think is the main key stat that we're focusing on this week, at least personally, right? That's the main thing I'm focusing on this week. He's one of the best players you could possibly have out there in the entire world, right? Let alone when we get in this slightly weaker field. So that's why I'm getting to a whole bunch of Siwoo and why I took him out there for that top 10 bet as well. Next up, we got Will Zalatoris, who doesn't have nearly as much course history to rely on. In fact, he only has a few starts and they were 3-4 years ago, but he does have that top 20 finish, his first ever start around here. Unfortunately, did miss the cut the year after that. And if you take a look at the last 24 measured rounds, so we kind of zoom out a little bit out there on Zalatoris, you can see the argument for wanting to play him. He's gaining in the 3T to green categories, about 2/3 of a stroke, in fact, over there with his iron play. And if you zoom in on the last 12 rounds, it starts to falter just a little bit, right? Especially with the 2 short game categories, but still gaining with the approach play. And now that he's had a few down weeks, a few missed cuts, in fact, over his last few starts, you're not going to see nearly as much steam out there in a Willie Zalatoris. And he's cheaper now, right? He's a very affordable price tag there at $8,800. And even in the betting markets, the pricing is starting to get a whole lot softer. In fact, I took him for a top 10 at plus 420 out there. It was, in fact, plus 400, but I boosted that to plus 440 with half of my exposure. So, you know, split it down the middle there at plus 420 for the effective odds. And, you know, he's a long iron specialist as well, right? Just like a Siwoo Kim, if you give me the top 5, top 10 players on the PGA Tour from 175 to 225 yards, Will Zalatoris is going to be towards the top of that list in most seasons. However you break up those buckets, right? You could do it in 25-yard intervals, 50-yard intervals, however you break that up. Will Zalatoris is just one of the best long iron players that we have in the world. So at this sort of golf course, you know, I think some people are really going to lean into that, you know, driver narrative, the added 150 yards and look for a whole lot of bombers. But don't forget about these long iron guys that on the par 3s are going to have the advantage. And let's not act like Will Zalatoris and Siwoo Kim are short off the tee. Like, sure, they're not the pot guiders of the world. Sure, they're not the Taylor Pendriths. They hit the ball 330, 340 yards, but they consistently get it out there 310, 315 in both cases. And because their long iron play is so much more consistent than those other players, I would argue that these are the guys that you really want on a week like this. And if it is softer, sure, the power players are going to get a little bit of a boost there, but that also means that second shot specialists like you have with these two players are going to have the ability to go out there and throw some darts. So I think that there's a side to that you should probably consider from the course fit angle, that players that are really good with their second shot, especially with those long irons, can actually throw darts on a week like this, right? Sometimes, even if you hit the best long iron shot possible, it might bounce out to like 25 feet. Especially at firm and fast golf courses, that's kind of the case. And it becomes kind of a putting contest and who can make the most 25 footers. On a week like this, if Siwoo, Zalatoris are locked in with the iron play, they can hit it to 5 to 10 feet. Like, it's going to hit, maybe bounce once and then settle in place. It is perfect for a second shot player like this. So before we talk about our value plays, a few other bets that I'm mixing in as well, do want to remind you guys on where you can find these spreadsheets for yourself, which of course are completely uncensored over there for my Patreon members. You can find a link to my Patreon in the description of this video. On there, I've got all my projections, my modeling for every single player, also my entire player pool and all the bets that I'm placing, not only for every single main slate like you see here in these videos every single week, but also so what I do for my showdown in rounds 2 through 4. I've got projected ownership, projected points out there for every single round, and of course the placement points accounted for out there for the Sunday showdown. So for all of that, make sure to join my Patreon page. Again, link in the description to go out there and join there. It's $15 a month to go out there and get all the DFS stuff that I do, which is, it's not even close, right? There's not even another site that can compare when it comes to the value that you're getting. It is the best value out there in the industry. It is quite literally less than $1 a slate to go out there and get all of the stuff that I do, whereas other sites are charging you $5 to $10 out there per slate, and they're giving you less accurate projections and less results that you're going to find that what you have over here. I mean, we've got over a 10K outright that we've cashed together, also had the takedowns down there for the team event last week, and that's just the last 2 weeks. I mean, we've already hit 4 outrights to this point of the year. I've already taken down 4 GPPs myself this year to this point. Obviously, you've still got to go out there, build your own lineups. You still got to go out there and reap your own success, but it's going to give you all the tools that I use to go out there and do so to perhaps start to sharpen up your own process and do it yourself. So you have all my player pool notes on there, right? You can obviously get the perspective onto who I'm playing for any given slate to also make you a better PGA DFS player. So if that's something that you guys want to check out, make sure to check out the link down below. But that's all I've got over there for the Patreon plug. So let's talk about our last few plays. So next up, we got our next value play, which is going to be a Gary Woodland here for the top 10 at plus 800. And he's just playing too good for me not to play him this week. And it's the form. If you go to the last 12 measured rounds out there in a Gary Woodland, you'll see exactly why I'm getting to him. He's gaining in pretty much every category. Around the green, he had one bad event, which is really the only reason why he's losing all those strokes in that category. But approach play has been very consistent lately. He's been driving the ball like you'd expect for one of the best drivers in PGA Tour history. And the putter has unlocked a completely different level of his game. And in the past, he had been a pretty decent putter, gaining like a quarter to a half a stroke per round. But lately, he has made it a strength of his game. And because of that, you've seen the top 10s and top 15s coming. And for some reason, Draftkings put him down here at $7,400, and the books aren't giving him any sort of respect. And I know he hasn't played here really at all over the last few years. In fact, you go to the last 5 years, he has not had any sample size around a TPC Craig Ranch. But this is the kind of course that you think he'd played well at, right? A long irons course, second shot golf course, like what you had there with the Willie Z and Siwoo Kim. And if it is going to be a long bomber's paradise this week, then Gary Woodland fits that as well. I mean, he hits the ball a mile, he hits a whole bunch of fairways. Lately has been one of the best drivers of the golf ball out there in this range. You just got to give me some Gary Woodland. Now, I'm expecting him to have some ownership. I think that is the one downside out there for DFS, but for betting, right, that has no impact out there in our process. It really just checks a lot of the different boxes that I'm looking for out there in players. In DFS, if he is carrying some ownership, which in this portion of the board might be like 7 to, I'd say like at most, Gary might be like 10% owned if everything went the wrong way and everyone was just using him out there in their lineups. Even if he was 10% owned, you still have 5 other spots to get different, right? Maybe you're using Scotty up top and sure, he's going to be taking up some ownership, but you still have 4 other players that you can throw into that lineup to offset all that chalk that you're taking. So, right, just because a guy is high owned, right, does not mean it's the end of the world. It's not who you play out there in lineups, as my guy Tyler Tambolini will say. It's how you go out there and actually put them together. It's how you play them. That really matters. So give me some G-dubs this week. Just hope that finally he can crack through for a top 5, maybe even a win out there on the PGA Tour. The top 10 would be enough out there for our outright bet. And I will say, from the GPP perspective, a top 10, probably close to an optimal play as well. So all of that coincides rather nicely. Next up, we got Alejandro Tosti here at $7,300. So only $100 cheaper than what we have there with Gary, but a top 12 total mono ranking play, which is excellent for this portion of the board, right? Especially down here at like number 40 in the pricing. And I got the same number for the top 10. So it was a top 10 at plus 800. And if you take a look at the recent form metrics, you're not going to find a better player in this range when it comes to tee to green play. Gaining over 0.8 strokes per round off the tee, gaining over 1.2 strokes approach per round. That is elite level stuff. And sure, Valimaki can say the same thing about the iron play, but no one can say it in both ball striking categories. And it hasn't even just been that. He's been pretty solid at chipping the ball, and he's a very, very inconsistent putter. Not the kind of guy that you'd expect to be one of the best putters out there on the PGA Tour at any point, but he's normally a lot better than what you've seen lately. So he's just been lighting it up out there. Tee to green is due to go out there and make a few more putts. And on this surface, though it isn't a great surface for him, he's about 0.35 shots better per round than what you have over his last 24 rounds, which you can see, right? He's still losing out there on bent grass, but he's been so terrible putting over his last 24 rounds, in fact, losing close to 0.6 strokes per round, that really anything is going to be better than that. And it's not even like the tee to green play has just been a recent fluke. Gsluke over the last 24 round sample size, so that'd be 6 full events, right, of going out there and making the cut. He's gaining in all 3 tee to green categories as well. So I love the form out there with Toasty, a wide open golf course. And last year, he did miss the cut around here, so it does have one start around TPC Craig Ranch. But it's worth noting that he missed the cut on the number at -5. So, I've seen much worse missed cuts out there from guys on tour. And he lost 6 strokes putting last year in those 2 rounds. So, the putter can be a problem. We've outlined that already, right? Losing close to a stroke per round over his last 12 measured rounds. But if he's even just a neutral this week on the greens, right, goes out there and is a perfect 0, that's like a top 20 finish at the very worst right there out there for Toasty, considering how well he's been hitting it from tee to green. So I'll take that kind of upside all day. And he's also the kind of player, by the way, that in DFS I think is an even better play than some of the other markets that you can take. I still like the top 10 there at +800, but he outscores his placement points. And what I mean by that is that he makes a lot of birdies. He'll give you some birdie streaks. He will make quite a few bogeys, like you saw at Corrales. He finished in second there, despite having, I think, like the most bogeys of anyone on the week because of how many birdies that he can post. So give me him there at $7,300, and maybe even has the upside to cash us with that top 10. And then the last play that we're going to go through here, our last value play of the week, is going to be a Max McGreevy at $6,900. And McGreevy has kind of fallen off a little bit. He really started 2025 off well, going out there and giving us some top 5, top 10s. Over the last month or so, he's had a few missed cuts and also some made cuts that didn't result into anything. So that's why when we look at the last 24 rounds, it looks a lot better than the last 12. Last 24 rounds, he's gaining close to a half a stroke per round. They're off the tee and on approach. The last 12 measured rounds is where it falls off rather sharply. He's losing off the tee. He's about a neutral over there on approach. And right, that's half this 24 round sample size, right? So what does that tell you about the 12 rounds before that, right? How well he was playing to where that 24 round sample size is so much into the positive into those 2 categories. That's what I remember about Max McGreevy, is I remember how well he was hitting it for that 12 round sample size. And sure, the short game could be a little bit better, but just like a Toasty, it's not like he's great over here on bent grass, but he is better than his recent sample size over there on the bent grass surface. So maybe the type of course I could get him back into the positive in the short game categories. Last week with Sam Stevens, he was in contention over there at the team event, and I can tell you as somebody that followed their group rather closely that McGreevy was doing a lot of the work. He was hitting some good iron shots. He was finally starting to get some putts to drop over there as well, which is going to be massive around this sort of golf course. And he's also a really good player from 175 to 225 when it comes to some of those proximity buckets. So yeah, give me some Max McGreevy this week. $6,900 I thought was a fair price tag for DFS. Unlike a Toasty, I don't think he'll be popular, right? You're talking about maybe at most about 5% ownership on this sort of play. So if you are looking to get some differentiation or looking to get some leverage out there into your lineups, you can do that with this sort of player. And then for the top 20 market, I also took him for the +425 there. I think he's got a lot of upside from the betting side as well. So give me a Max McGreevy that is now back into the scent, right? Somebody that was really striping it just over a month ago at a golf course that fits his game well, right? It's long off the tee. He is a long player when it comes to his driver. Just has to plug the short game, right? Has to find a way to go out there, even just be a neutral in those 2 categories. If so, we're going to get the exact kind of finish that we're looking for. Alrighty, guys, that is all I've got for the betting and DFS preview. Go ahead, smash that like button if you guys haven't already, and also comment down below who you've got winning this golf tournament for a chance to earn a free month of my Patreon. And as long as they aren't Scotty Scheffler, you'll win that free month if they get the dub, and it'll be on a first come, first serve basis. So once a player's taken once, they cannot be taken again. So go ahead, claim your player before anyone else goes out and steals them. Best of luck out there with your giveaway, any of your GPP exposure this week. Hopefully we can run it back, make it 2 smash weeks in a row, and maybe rather than finishing second out there in the big lottery, I could take home first this time around. Best of luck out there with everything that you guys are doing. Maybe we can make it an outright cash there as well. And hey, even if it's not outright, we keep it just sort of the top 5, top 10, top 20 bets. If it's a profitable week out there from that angle, no complaints are going to be found over here. But that's all I've got, guys. I appreciate your support in the channel as per usual. Also, subscribe to the channel so you guys don't miss any of the content to come, including our Wednesday live stream, which will be on this channel at 8 p.m. Eastern time. That's where we're going to be doing the prop live stream this week. And then a new thing we're doing this week is the DFS and Showdown stuff is going to be over there on the Ship It Nation YouTube channel. So I'm out there with all of your DFS questions over there on the Draftkings side and whatnot. That's actually going to be at 7 p.m. Eastern on the Ship It channel. So it's going to be 2 live streams, kind of like what we've been doing doing out there for each showdown stream. All right, we've been doing those over at Ship It, and then doing the prop and betting stuff over on my channel afterwards. We're gonna be doing that same kind of thing, but for main slate every single week. So the main slate betting stuff, right, will be over here on my channel. The DFS stuff will be over there at the Ship It side. Just another way that we're, strengthening the partnership out there between our different sites, our different channels over here on YouTube, and I'm excited for it. It's, puts us out there in front of a little bit of a larger audience at times, different eyes that we're not always getting in front of before, which is an exciting thing, right? Get to grow the community a little bit, get to make these live streams even more exciting than what they are before. So yeah, looking forward to that out there as well. So best of luck out there with everything that you guys are doing. I'll see you guys out there for the live streams on Wednesday.